DuVernay's A Wrinkle in Time is so well-intentioned and has such beautiful moments that I can totally understand why critics were at a loss for words when the social media embargo lifted last week. Basically, they decided if they didn't have something nice to say, they weren't going to say anything at all. Although today, as the actual embargo lifts, you can see that the inevitable was only avoidable for so long. And I suspect audiences, by the way, will be just as conflicted, because what does one say about a film that clearly has such love in its heart? Yet the harsh reality is that as a film, it is an utter failure. And I actually would go that far, even though it pains me to do so. Now, I would say the best way to describe Ava DuVernay's A Wrinkle in Time is as a Michael Jackson music video, without any of the awesome music or dance numbers. And I think the film would have benefited from such additions. Now, some of you might be like, that's horrible, Grace. How could you say that A Wrinkle in Time needs music and dance numbers? Well, once you see the movie, you'll understand that it would have fit perfectly, especially with some of the clear Bollywood influences in the costume and hair and makeup design. Because it needs something, I'll tell you that. And the reason I reference Michael Jackson's music videos in particular is because they had very high production values. They were famous for this. Ornate and ambitious setups, were chock full of important messages, and sometimes had awesome cameos. But as stories made little sense and were a bit too obvious. That's a big problem here. Yes, this Wrinkle in Time is so concerned with message and inclusiveness and tries to check so many boxes. It's like, pick your battles, Ava DuVernay and screenwriter Jennifer Lee. But because of that, none of the characters seem real, because there isn't enough time to really establish any of them. And speaking of time, DuVernay and Frozen screenwriter Jennifer Lee take a 256-page book with minimal illustrations and make it seem like they're adapting a glossy, short children's big picture book instead. I also found it ironic, speaking of adapting the source material, that while A Wrinkle in Time is supposed to celebrate women in science, right? The two women who made it basically stripped all the science out of the story. It's only there in face value. And on that note, it does seem like large chunks of the film have been edited out. It runs under 2 hours. With bits like Meg, for example, explaining traveling via the fifth dimension, which we saw in the second trailer, cut out of the movie. Also, to keep things speeding along at breakneck speed, really, you're like, slow down, I'd like to spend some time in this scene, please. Really important things, like the dramatic first entrance of Mrs. Whatsit, happen off camera. And as a result, when you couple that with the impressive yet still television-level production values, it makes the film's far-flung theories even harder to swallow. Basically, I just didn't believe that any of this was happening. I know it's a movie, and it was, I know that it's shot in front of a green screen, and it's VFX, and it's fictional, but, you're supposed to be able to take the journey with the characters. But you were like, really? You just wouldn't believe it, right? It seemed like child's play. It just seemed like a flight of fancy that you just couldn't go along on. So what's left with the science and most of the story stripped away? Well, and this is great, there's a lovely theme about loving yourself through the lens of a mixed-race, nerdy girl like Meg, who doesn't see herself as beautiful or of any worth. And her journey of gaining self-confidence is the best thing in the movie, and clearly what interested Ava DuVernay and Jennifer Lee. Helping the storyline is Storm Reid as Meg, a very likable actress, and later on in the movie, albeit briefly, she gets the chance to show a little range as an actress as well. I was impressed. I was like, oh, it's a small little thing, but she sold it. It was one of the few moments in the movie where I was like, I like that. And then Oprah Winfrey is the one who helps her on this journey, and their heart-to-heart conversation about halfway through the film is the best thing in the film. In fact, it reminded me of that recent powerful photo of the little girl looking at Michelle Obama's official portrait at the National Portrait Gallery that went viral. And I thought that that's what this movie has to offer. That's the gift that is wrapped under all of this noise, right? Beautiful noise, well-intentioned noise, but that's the heart here. I also thought that the VFX with giant Oprah was pretty cool, and also one of the few believable moments in the movie. I believe that Oprah was a giant walking through the story. It was cool. Oprah also has the best makeup and costume design, or maybe it's that Oprah can just rock the look, whereas I think Reese Witherspoon and Mindy Kaling struggled a little bit in that department. And as for those two, they had their moments, but really they underscored here that they are small screen talents. Reese Witherspoon not always, but certainly these days. Then as for Deric McCabe, he takes precocious to a whole new level, and I do not mean that in a good way. He pulls considerable focus in the film away from Meg, often to the point of it seeming like his movie, and he's the least real element in the movie. He feels like a total Hollywood construct, really misguided. I think they're trying to accomplish certain things with his character, but I think the fakeness of it, and that he has no layers and never seems like an actual person. There's like kind of a reveal about his character, so I can understand why they chose to make him so precocious. But if you're going to try to, basically I think I think he's supposed to be a gay character, but I think a movie like Love, Simon is far more effective in accomplishing anything here, whereas this seems like tokenism and like we should have moved past this kind of depiction at this point. I don't think you're doing any favors for that kind of representation by not making such a character seem real, to have actual emotions and ups and downs, etc. All right, so as for the other male characters in the story, while their roles are all very small and very thinly constructed, it's worth noting that Chris Pine, Andre Holland, Zach Galifianakis, and Michael Pena are all able to do quite a lot with very little, each hitting impressive emotional beats. But as for Levi Miller, ouch, 0 for 2, Miller. Everything about his character, from the way Calvin is written to the way Miller portrays him, rings false. So again, while A Wrinkle in Time is very well intentioned, it's hard to believe that two people with such strong films on their resume, although Frozen was a little bit of a happy accident, as we know from the behind-the-scenes story there, but still, with those two films on their resume, it's shocking to see them fail so utterly in adapting this book. I can't recommend it for theaters unless, and this is important, you feel the message about self-love is one that you or someone you know needs to hear. And if that is the case, then despite its rampant flaws, I think that A Wrinkle in Time will still be a very special movie for you. So at least it's got that going for it. So that's my review of A Wrinkle in Time. I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.